Well, thank you for sticking around after that introduction. There's definitely a good start, and I apologise. I like less words rather than more, and that was too much to share. What I wanted to talk about is about EdTech, educational technology. Our world is changing, technology is infused within our schools, and naturally, with choice, comes challenge about how we do the right things. So without further ado, a photograph from my holiday last week, honest, and no use of AI within this presentation. That's me, and you'll see a small cockapoo dog appear. He travels often on my trips, sadly not here, but you know what? Don't take yourself too seriously in life. Say it as it is. This is much about my passion more than it is just about information for all you. So who am I? Very, very briefly, I'm chair of a multi-academy trust in the UK. I work with the Department for Education. I'm CEO of an EdTech company, no surprise there. I also work and support an alternative provision academy and chair the British Education Suppliers Association's EdTech group. In other words, I love to spread the love about EdTech, but I also spend half my time in schools making sure we gather with impact. And on occasions, I write books about it because I know I don't look it, but at my age, if I don't write it down, I'm probably going to forget it. So, let's talk. My view is, and you'll probably see the amount of time I spent on these luxury graphics just for you. When it comes to shaping a digital vision in your school and potentially in your organization, sometimes it's hard to see the wood from the trees. Did you see how I linked that theme there? And I think fundamentally, with choice comes challenge. There are more tools, there are more approaches that we can embed and utilize within education. But also with that breadth of choice comes the challenge of how do we identify the right things and how do we shape a digital vision that actually has purpose, is inclusive within our schools and education system. So when I go to inset and do training with staff in schools and school systems, and I rock up on the stage and I say, good morning, I am Al, we're going to talk about digital strategy. Half the room go, yes, this is going to be innovative, exciting. And the other half of the room go, oh, not again. I haven't got capacity for that. It's not my specialism. How am I going to fit that in with everything else? Why are we doing it? The why is often the most common sentence that we hear. So, we need to take a few steps. And the truth of it is, no matter how much the techies will tell you, this is a specialism, you need my services, it's really not. It's common sense. It's debunking some of the things we try and make it more complex than it really is. So we start in our schools with a digital vision and our strategy by looking backwards. What have we done already that worked well? What have we got evidence of impact with that we could build on? What have we got that, frankly, we can't see any benefit? And more often than not, we discover we've got subscriptions for tools and resources that we don't use anymore. So we end up using that looking back to get a state of the nation. What technology have we got? What infrastructure? How's it being used? This isn't about let's go out shopping. This is about reflecting on what we have in place. When we've done that, we go into my very subtle Venn diagram, which is about how do we co-produce a digital vision? Do we just wait for leadership to say, here it is, and everybody join the journey? Or do we start at the heart by thinking about teachers and students and parents where appropriate, at how technology might change and inspire within our teaching and learning practice? Maybe ways to engage with disengaged learners, ways to close the feedback loop, ways to reduce teacher workload and pressure. And then around that, we link in senior leadership and our school development plan. What are our priorities this year? Is it our priorities focused on mathematics or phonics or whatever it may be? And that might drive some of that prioritization. We want our network and IT team to be involved in the conversation because we don't want to say, great strategy, Al, but did you budget $500,000 for all the new kit and infrastructure? You need to know in advance. You don't want to build on weak foundations. Data privacy. No matter where you are in the world, there will be challenges now. What technology are we going to use? Often the term that's best wrapped around that is a data protection impact assessment. What data is stored? Where's it stored? Who has access to it? And how long for? And when we can wrap our risk around those key leaders. Then we've got our SEND, Special Educational Needs and Disability. Are we trying to introduce technology to close the gap or increase the digital gap? Are we going for the most complex tools that actually disengage some of our learners? Or are we looking at technology that can empower all, close those gaps? And being mindful of every decision we take linked to accessibility and more vulnerable children is absolutely fundamental. Safeguarding. Most of the new technology is in the cloud, which of course isn't the cloud, it's just somebody else's computer. That's the technical definition. But the more we have our children online engaging in content and resources, albeit curated and hopefully safe, we also need to make sure we've got the right tools around to keep them safe, and more importantly, alongside those tools, educate them to be safe. Digital citizens. When we come on very briefly to mention AI on our little journey, we'll recognize that it's all about effective questioning. It's understanding how to validate information, source its content, to be able to ask the right questions. Then we've got governance, that oversight in terms of what are we doing, how are we going to do it, and that missing question, why? Why are we doing this? Is it cool? Is it because the other schools in our region are adopting new technology? Or have we got clear purpose on how we're going to make impact with this? And then we've got finance, the one that I always say should not dictate the journey. It simply dictates the speed of the journey, not the direction of travel. And we've seen, and I've worked with schools that have invested heavily in iPads, and then 2 years later, their project takes them on a Google direction, and that investment was wasted because they hadn't got that longer-term vision and the steps to proceed. They'd gone all in on something. And then lastly, the top one, which really should be a big circle all the way around, training and continuous professional development. Notice the C, continuous. If we were a football team and we got half an hour or a day on the first day of the season, and that was the end of our training, we probably wouldn't perform well during the year. Yet, as educators, we say, welcome back to a new academic year. We've got some great new tools for you. Here's a couple of hours where you can watch somebody do a presentation for you. Off you go, be amazing in the classroom. Use this tool rather than structuring the professional development around it. And I'll show you a few ways we can link into that. So, you might have gathered at this point that I'm a firm believer that often the limitation towards technology adoption is not the technology, it's the human beings, and actually providing the scope and the support and the resources to build teacher confidence. Sylvia Duckworth's I'm a big fan of her sketch notes. Any of you in education, I'm sure you've seen her books. She very kindly allowed me to use her images in some of my books and presentations, and I certainly couldn't draw to that standard. So good job, Sylvia. Anyway, you can see the basic steps there, and we can all empathize with the walk into a strange classroom in a strange school with 30 children you don't know and say you're doing this lesson with iPads, and you're probably going to go into survival mode. Will this work? I'm not sure what happens when I do this. Where are the resources kept? Well, it's often no different when it's the start of the academic year and your school's changed its MIS system and you're trying to think on your feet how to do it. So building those layers of confidence to the point where ultimately we want to spark innovation is pretty fundamental to what we're trying to do in our classroom. And diplomatically, remove the edu. Wouldn't a business be thinking the same way about its staff and its workforce? Its most expensive asset. How do we get the most out of people? Yet often in businesses, we're like, well, who's figured it out? Come and tell me. Well, how about we leverage and help people figure it out so that they can go on and do the innovation? A very handsome chap and his dog. You'll notice the recurring theme in this presentation. EdTech is not the solution. Now, I know, hang on a minute, Al. You've just come on the stage to talk about EdTech and selecting it, and now you're saying it's not the solution. Well, it's not the solution. It is the enabler, the empowerer, and where appropriate, a lever to help support amazing teaching and learning. But it alone can do nothing. It is all about empowering and providing capacity for that human-to-human interaction where the real magic happens. There's quite a few things on my signs as I go on my journey through my landscape with Ferdy, my dog. Here are some of the topics that really schools are looking at when they're shaping their digital vision. So EdTech and PedTech. Anybody come across the term PedTech? You'd be shocked to hear that the P stands for pedagogy. So it's pedagogy-informed EdTech. Now, of course, there's EdTech we use in our classroom that fundamentally pedagogy is at the heart. There's EdTech we use to make sure that our children can access their meals in the canteen or access online resources where pedagogy is not at the heart. There's separators here. But looking at how we can evidence impact increasingly is the strand. There are some great resources. If anybody wants the slide decks, it includes all the links to research, including year-long project looking at how EdTech within a school how it impacted, but actually lots of the impact was about that time saver, more quality interaction with young people. We're a bit obsessed in education. We need to make a measure of impact. Well, that's going to be progress and outcomes, because that's what we're here to do, right? But what about retention and recruitment, well-being, support of our SEMH, greater community cohesion? Actually, there's lots of things that technology does that's not always immediately measurable, but actually lines in really heavily with some of the core fundamentals. So the challenge at leadership is to go away and redefine your measures of impact, because it's not all just about what can we see in 1 or 2 terms' time. More pictures. Sorry, but again, they're designed for takeaways. That, we had a bit of a cover in the last session, so I won't dwell. Some of the ways that we can use artificial intelligence. Now, there's a bit of an irony in a way with the AI conversation, actually, because what we're talking about, and I do myself online, is all about Gen AI, generative AI. I type something, I create something new. Actually, the bulk of work within our schools is non-generative. It's tools that are used for personalized learning pathways, tools that are used to analyze captured data, whether it's from formative or summative assessments, and spot gaps where there need to be interventions to support a child or a particular group within the cohort. So we're kind of looking ahead, and we're starting to see now, predominantly, how can I use curated resources with guardrails to create lesson plans, or certainly drafts of lesson plans, that we can then put our human expertise around. That ties in with our staff retention bit, doesn't it? Trying to make the job almost doable. It's not going to fix the problem, but looking at ways to do it. And then moving on from that, we start to think about how can we weave that into the curriculum for our learners. Some schools are taking ChatGPT, the GPT bit, where you can create your own version with your own source content, and using it as digital projects with students to create their school help and well-being bot, where they're actually learning the idea and the concepts about the data set, effective questioning, tying things down, at the same time providing a resource that can benefit students. I often get asked to share a vision for a school for a digital world, and people expect me to say, you walk in the door and it's like 2100, it's computer screens everywhere, and it's all digital, and robots at the front of the class. Of course, that's not the case. My vision is that a good school with digital shouldn't be having conversations about digital. It's just there. It's another tool in the toolbox. It's part of school life. Some amazing lessons happen with no digital at all, and others it can be a real empowerer and an enabler. In one of our cohorts, moving in what we refer to as transitions in the UK, moving from primary year 6 into year 7, not quite ready yet for full education where they're moving about. We have a cloud nurture group. Our year 7 students are learning about Shakespeare at the very beginning. In our cloud group, they're using Minecraft to build the Globe Theatre and start to talk about the concepts of why it's that shape and what was presented on the stage, who the protagonists were. A soft way to bring it in using technology to engage those learners. So let's move on our journey. A little reference one. I'm not expecting you to watch this and then I'll ask questions in a second. That's your digital environment in your schools now. We often talk EdTech and we think, well, it's the computer and the kids' computers and we've got some curriculum software. Understanding the breadth of the ecosystem, all the technology that makes a modern school or school system work, really identifies why that vision needs to connect the dots, and why, with the best will in the world, there is no one expert in your organization to know all these bits. Again, why collaboration and co-production is so key. But understanding that allows you, when you're looking at major acquisitions or changes of technology, to actually make sure you think about those interconnections so that you can have smooth transition. I also share here, not on commission with ISTE, but I do have a lot of regard for many of the resources they do. Another little snapshot for you, essential conditions for effective use in EdTech. They do a great paper on that, gives you some really good ideas. The checklist of things to think about as part of you building your digital vision. So I always like to share it as we move along. We're going to move into the how do we pick. One little reminder for you, it's a very important one. You can see no expense spared on the budget. Less is more and less is chocolate, which basically means I absolutely work with schools developing their digital strategies, but it's not a race to how much you can put in at once. It's far better to do in layers, measure impact, embed it, build confidence, and then build again. Often there's a sense we've got to do too much and those projects fail because of capacity and clarity on how these things link together. I have kept talking about impact because impact is the word. Ferdy wants to chop a few trees down here for a bit of impact. I like to be, impact can be really quite challenging, as you can see when I was heading over on my holidays. But the key is there's all different kinds of evidence that you can pick up on. There's the anecdotal evidence. I was just at the LEAP conference and this person told me they use this product and it's having an amazing impact. There's the kind of descriptive evidence. Well, we've got a white paper from the school and we've been able to see how this technology was embedded in their process. We've got the correlational evidence. Well, we downloaded this product and we've got one cohort using it and one that aren't, and we can see the impact. And then we've kind of got the causal evidence, which is maybe the curriculum software. Well, there was a research paper done where they undertook a review over a number of different resources. All these things build you that sense of, is this the product that we should be looking at? And what you end up with, this is the first half, is my little rubric that you can take away, which you can apply but adapt depending on the product you're looking at. So when we say, we've got an idea for this great product that we want to adapt in our school, the first thing is recognize there's two streams here. There's an educational consideration and there's a technology consideration. So from a pedagogy, educational perspective, does this tool align with our curriculum? And it's a pretty obvious starter for 10. If it doesn't, you're probably on the wrong train anyway. Have we understood, done any kind of questionnaire, what we're trying to achieve with this product in terms of its content? Have we checked we haven't got something that does it already? The number of school districts and multi-academy trusts I go to, where they've in isolation chosen this product only to find out that 3 other schools in their cluster are using something different. There's huge economies of scale there, not just in purchasing, but in sharing resources and training. And do we have an understanding of its instructional purpose? Have we actually documented what we are hoping to achieve with this product? Then in parallel, does it work on our current and future devices? A good example, it only works on an iPad. Well, what happens if we decide to go Chromebooks next week, or we go across to Windows, whatever it may be? Looking at solutions that are platform agnostic is really important. Will it work on our current infrastructure? Yes, it's a cloud-based product, don't worry. Oh, but it needs 10 megabits of data bandwidth, or we need to update our access points or our storage, whatever it may be. Do you agree with its privacy policy? Well, the data is stored in wherever. I don't want to pick a region. The Antarctic. Does that fall inside of our data protection policy rules? And can it be rostered, integrated? In other words, will it pull all my student and teacher information and class rosters into it automatically? Or am I going to have to maintain this product in parallel? Again, we don't want more workload. But if we kind of agree with all those bits and say, yes, it does, then we can move on and we can say, actually, now let's have a look here. Have we actually vetted it? Have we sat down as a group to review it? Have we had a presentation from the vendor? Have we actually evaluated an absolute must? Have we tried it within our school environment? And have we then got some recommendations we can shape? And if you adapt depending on the type of product, but force yourself to go through those questions, you can save an awful lot of time in the evaluation by not doing it because you didn't ask the questions before. And also you can make sure it's a co-produced decision. Technically, pedagogically, stakeholders are not only involved, but are aware. So it all ties together. So moving on very quickly, these are the kinds of things you can do. Get your assessment. This is Education Alliance Finland. There are other ones. Look for validation of products. Have they been validated based on certain criteria and capacity? We're going to move really quick now. I've no idea how I've got long left, but we'll whiz along here. If you're building a digital strategy in your school or your district or your MAT, wherever you are in the world, these are the common strands that come up when I'm working with schools. Have one area focused on innovating learning, one on building students' digital skills, one on developing teachers' skills and their innovation, one focused around the technology and the infrastructure, one on developing effective communication, both within school and outside of school, and last but not least, how can it benefit everybody's well-being? And so many people forget the last one. Again, the why. Are we trying to do things better? And if better, surely within that our children enjoy learning more, that our staff actually have the time and energy to do what they're amazing at, and we've got better communication with our parents. Then, as well as that, you can now delegate. You can have different staff with different experiences leading those different strands, feeding back in. And that allows you to embrace more junior staff who may have come from other organizations to share their experiences and best practice along the way. And so, hopefully, we'll move on there. One of my favorite ones, one that Ferdy agrees with here, develop digital champions. You know, I can walk into a school and I can pick up a piece of paper or a little booklet and I'll know who is the expert on history, STEM, mathematics, whatever the topic is. And if I say, who's the expert on Teams or OneLook or Google Classroom, there's a bit of a tumbleweed moment. Actually, if you want me as an educator to go and learn a tool for my classroom and research it, I will have so much more confidence, rather than having just YouTube as my friend, to know that I can go and speak to Sarah in this department or Fred in this department, who I know have already been there, done that, and they'll share resources, advice. That's soft mentoring. And then from that, we do within our own trust, termly, we have a digital teach meet. Stuff just 3 minutes. What did you discover that's worked really well for you in your classroom? And just as importantly, what didn't? And if you can remember those strands, it starts you on your journey of cohesive conversations in your school. We are on the home straight. I always try and give a few top tips. So the first top tip on the list is get everybody involved. Any project where you're not included, why would you feel empowered to take part and support and energize? Make sure you've got everyone's voice. Don't try and do too much too quickly. Think chocolate whenever you hear that phrase. Plan for lots of continuous professional development and then plan some more. Number one cause of technology failures is people not understanding the technology. Build confidence. Hallelujah. If people are confident using tools, they're much more likely to innovate with them. Identify ways to measure impact. Remember, it's not just progress and attainment. If you can provide a way to nurture learners, reduce staff workload, support and embrace your SEND children, there are all different measures that you might look at for this year, and sometimes the academics are slightly longer term. Communication is the key. If you're a Spandau Ballet fan, you'll know what I mean about that, but maybe it's too much for most of you. But fundamentally, when it comes to projects, we don't communicate the why. Good news, staff, we're changing our MIS system. It'll be active next Monday. And we're doing that because, well, it's hopefully going to save you time and it's hopefully going to do this, and we plan to do that, but don't worry, we've got training in place. We've got some exemplars recorded that you can access at any time. And don't forget that Billy, Fred, and Sarah are your go-to people. What a difference. Okay, well, I know now. If I have a go, I've got a problem, I know where to go. The difference with communication is key. And make sure all of your systems, that's a little bit of an AL reference, I try and work and develop technology that supports schools to allow them to foster that confidence in the classroom. Not content, the ways to shepherd and nurture students, give teachers control of all the devices. And so if you're ever interested, take a look. If you're not interested, it's okay. And last but not least, get in touch. I'm a serial sharer. Perhaps not as bad as Dave, but I am a serial sharer. I love sharing resources. I've written my yellow book up there is a step-by-step guide of how to deliver EdTech in a digital strategy over the last 30 years. But more importantly, reach out. If you want a resource, I'll either share one with you or I'll know a man or woman who's got a good resource and connect you. Magpieing is the key to successful progress. You've been a pleasure. Thank you for sticking around after that introduction. Hopefully it's clearer what we're all about now, and thank you very much.
Makes perfect sense to me. Thank you so much, Al. Before you leave the stage, I've got a couple of questions to throw at you. The first one, we've got a couple here. One or two we'll take. First one is, it's been an ongoing debate throughout this entire session here at LEAP about the kids are into AI, the teachers are scared of the kids cheating on AI, so there's kind of like an unsaid relationship about whether ChatGPT should be allowed in a classroom, shouldn't be allowed in a classroom, or how much you can involve it. What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, try and do it in a really condensed way. First thing is, trying to block AI is like pushing water uphill. Can't stop it. It's accessible in so many different places. What schools are starting with, effectively, is training staff with the confidence to use chosen AI tools as part of their lesson planning and preparation. The school can do their own DPIA and say, in our school, we're a Google school, we want you to use Gemini, or we want you to use ChatGPT, what it be, and then we put some basic signposting around it. If you use more than 2 sentences of content generated from that within your lesson planning, make sure you signpost it. That's the kind of building confidence. The teach meets. Who are the go-to people that can build confidence? And we're just going to ring fence for content curation. When we move to the students, the first part is, let's plan as part of our digital citizenship, talking to our children about effective questioning, about how we can validate the information that we've secured. And then the second part is, which is going to be harder because it's adapting, is how can we change the way that we do our assessments to bypass that element of a child could have gone away and generated something. So looking at ways we can ask children the human response to this and then encourage them to use a tool approved by the school to look how they can stretch and further their knowledge and feed that back in as a signposted response. AI checkers on the whole don't work. It's this little race of technology, the same way as policy doesn't work because policy's always reflective on what's happened 6 months ago, a year ago. It's incumbent on schools. We either close our eyes and say, you can't use AI, and the children go home and say, well, I better not speak to Siri or Alexa. You better not use your sat-nav or your Spotify playlist, because that's AI as well. You can't hide from it. What you can do is empower people with the skills. How do you check? How do you verify? Did that bloke really come on a zebra to the LEAP conference? Or was it possible that something else was done? How might he have done it? Tell me how it had been done and how you could use that in a project. There's so much project-based learning now, great resources online on how you can weave it in. But it all starts with confidence, giving teachers the confidence to give it a try without the sword of Damocles of, if you get caught, you're in trouble. So it starts with the basics.
That was a great answer, about 20 questions in one go. We're going to run out of time, unfortunately. If you want to connect, you've got the QR code there. I know that Al will be around to answer questions directly, and that fly, whoever sent it, it might be a drone, probably not even a fly anymore. Thank you. Yeah, I'll put it in for later. Then Al will be here to share those details with you. Once again, a round of applause for Al. Brilliant stuff.